Greetings, everyone. Do you think other people are necessary for our spiritual life to develop? If so, who then helps us develop our spiritual life? Welcome to my podcast, A Psychologist Looks at Scripture. My name is Peter Doherty. I'm a Catholic priest and a psychologist who integrates my training in psychology and scripture studies to gain a different understanding of the Gospels from a unique perspective and focus on new pastoral teachings for Christians. The Gospels provide us with a rich source of learning about God and developing our spirituality. We are far from exhausting their full learning potential. My podcasts are between 7 to 10 minutes in length, where I share insights and reflections that I hope will be useful to you. Please do not hesitate to contact me with questions or comments. I love to hear from you, my listeners. Today's podcast is from Matthew chapter 2, verse 1 to 12. This gospel will be read in churches January the 5th, 2025. In today's gospel, the arrival of the Magi is noted. This gospel is full of symbolism about who Jesus would be. Some biblical traditions list the Magi as kings, and some traditions have even named them Casper, Malachi, and Balthazar. Likely this naming is primarily derived from Western Christian tradition. Their names, and even that there were three of them, is not actually confirmed in the Bible. This assumption arises from and is linked to the three gifts they present: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Three gifts, therefore, mean three wise men. I think it's highly unlikely that three kings would have gone into the desert alone without an entourage for protection. Likely, if these three kings showed up in a small town, everyone would soon know, and King Herod would not have had to rely on the Magi to find out exactly where Jesus was. The gifts brought by the wise men give us a hint and foretell the ministry of Jesus: gold representing royalty, frankincense symbolizing divinity, and myrrh foreshadowing the suffering and death. I propose that the Magi were Gentiles who were interested in science. I use the term loosely, as science as we know it was in its infancy. Likely they were interested in the stars, and they had studied them, trying to make sense of the cosmos, as they noted the movements and the patterns presented in the night sky. We take for granted that many scientific advances we have today. 2,000 years ago, it was a very different story. The appearance of the star to Gentile astronomers, rather than Jewish leaders, illustrate a broader message about the inclusivity of Jesus' mission. The star signifies that the gospel is for all people, transcending culture and religious boundaries. The star is also associated with kingship and authority, reinforcing Jesus' identity as the King of the Jews. Tradition has it that when a king or someone special is born, a star might appear. This idea of a star heralding a significant birth can be traced back to ancient Jewish texts. For example, Balaam's prophecy in the book of Numbers mentions a star emerging from Jacob, which has been interpreted as foretelling a rise of a significant leader or ruling from Israel. This prophecy has been associated with the coming of a Messiah who would bring a whole new world order. I want to draw your attention to King Herod. His response to the birth of a king is to be deeply troubling, and he feels threatened, thus reflecting on his own insecurity. King Herod, known as Herod the Great, ruled Judea from 37 BCE to his death in 4 BEC. He is a complex historical figure, often characterized by his ambition and ruthless nature. Herod's rule is frequently described as brutal and paranoid. He eliminated rivals with extreme measures, including members of his own family. Notably, he executed his own wife, Miriam, and several of his sons out of jealousy and a fear of losing power. His reign was characterized by a pervasive atmosphere of fear. He employed secret police to monitor dissent and suppress opposition among the Jewish populace. Herod's action during the time surrounding the birth of Jesus exemplify his ruthless character. According to the Gospel of Matthew, he ordered the massacre of all male infants in Bethlehem to eliminate any potential threat posed by the prophecy, King of the Jews. This event, while not corroborated by contemporary historical accounts outside the Bible, aligns with Herod's established reputation for cruelty. In conclusion, many historians consider him a puppet king, whose reign was marked by violence and paranoia rather than genuine leadership or benevolence. It is clear that his first response to Jesus was to seek to destroy him. Fortunately, the Magi did not go back to share with Herod what they had found and seen. We can see how his fear led him to do terrible acts against his own people. His lust for power prevented him from meeting Jesus. Fear and lust for power can lead good people to actions they would not normally do. I realize more and more that fear is often the cornerstone of sin. I have often wondered about the relationship between control and fear. They're likely related. The need for control and the use of fear are integrally connected. The need to control people and situations may often be a defensive response to underlying fears. The fear of what might happen in the future can compel people to exert control over their surroundings and relationships. This fear can manifest as anxiety, leading individuals to obsessively plan or manipulate situations to avoid perceived threats. The desire for control can thus become an exhausting cycle, where the more one tries to control, the more anxious they become when things do not go as planned. It is essential to recognize that much of the control we seek is an illusion. Life is inherently unpredictable, and attempts to control every aspect can lead to frustration and disappointment when outcomes don't align with expectations. This realization can provoke further anxiety, reinforcing the cycle of fear and control. Understanding this connection is vital for developing healthier responses and ultimately finding peace in life's unpredictability. Learning to accept that not everything can be controlled is crucial for breaking free from this cycle. Embracing uncertainty allows individuals to experience life more fully without the constant burden of managing every outcome. We embrace freedom when we focus on the present moment rather than fixating on future uncertainties. Doing so can help us mitigate feelings of anxiety associated with the need to control. Mindfulness practices and experiences encourage individuals to engage with their current experiences without judgment, fostering a sense of peace and acceptance. Trusting in a higher power can indeed help reduce fear and the need for control. Many recovery programs emphasize the importance of community support along with trust in their higher power. Engaging with others who share similar beliefs can reinforce feelings of safety and belonging, further reducing anxiety associated with control issues. Thank you for listening. I invite you to join me next week when I examine the Gospel of Luke, who describes the arrival of John the Baptist and the baptism of Jesus in the Jordan. If this is the first time you've heard my podcast and you are interested in hearing more, I urge you to listen to my podcast listed on the website. Every Sunday, I release a new podcast focusing on the gospel for the following week. I invite you to listen to all my podcasts, and I hope the reflections are useful to you. The podcast, A Psychologist Looks at Scripture, is found in most of the platforms that carry podcasts. The podcast is also available on YouTube. Please do not hesitate to subscribe and leave a review. Feedback from my listeners are helpful to me as I try to focus on being useful and relevant to my listeners. I'd also like to thank my team, Heather Patel-Doherty and Richard Coulombe, who play an important part in the preparation for this podcast. If you have any questions or concerns, I can be reached by email at peter.doherty@gmail.com. God bless you. Have a wonderful week and special New Year's blessings for all of you. God bless.